Hi everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and this is a review of Green Lantern, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 23, entitled Larfleeze. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. I kind of have some trouble with the name. So anyways, the episode summary is, in search of a weapon against the Manhunters, Hal travels to Okaara in the Omega system to find a legendary weapon representing the orange color of the spectrum. However, he discovers that it is in the hands of Larfleeze, who has succumbed to the emotion of greed and refuses to give it up. So that is summary for this week's episode. And like the summary mentions, Hal, Kilowog, and Razor travel to the planet of Okaara after they talk to the Guardian Appa as a means to deal with the situation with Aya. So they're trying to figure out how to stop her. And so Razor mentions that there is this legendary, the orange power on the color spectrum, and that there's a weapon that deals with this. So he tells them about the orange lanterns. So they go to Okaara to find the orange power battery and get that. And in the course of the episode, Hal ends up being corrupted by the power of the orange battery, which is the power of avarice or greed. So he ends up having to overcome the corruptive influence of the battery. And at the same time, they have to deal with how they're going to deal with Aya towards the end of the episode. Like, they're kind of no closer to figuring out how to stop Aya. So that was pretty much this week's episode. I liked it. It was interesting to get to see one of the other cores. It was interesting to see the Orange Lantern Corps. Although in the series we find out that in this week's episode we find out that they're decimated, and that there's only the one, which is Larfleeze, and he's definitely, it makes sense why he's an Orange Lantern, because he's pretty greedy. The animation for this week was nice. One of the bigger moments, besides Hal having to overcome, I guess, his personal demons and, overcome the influence of greed and, get back to who he is that in one part of the episode, like when you look up at the sky, like these stars are just going blank, like across the sky, like it's just getting black. And that it's obviously that this is Aya's influence. Like, she is literally destroying huge star systems, like whole swaths of the night sky are just going black. And that was definitely a really cool moment. It was cool to see Hal as an Orange Lantern. But that was pretty much kind of just what happened with this week's episode. As far as getting introduced to Larfleeze, he was an okay character. I guess this is ironic, but I kind of found him to be like overly cartoonish. Now I don't read the comics, so I'm not familiar with his character in the comics, but from, I guess, images of him, and I think what I've heard people talk about him, like, it seems like he's supposed to be a pretty formidable and kind of badass character. Like, I know a lot of people really like him as a character in the comics, and in this he kind of just came off as very cartoonish. Like, he came off a lot like a golem from the Lord of the Rings series. Like, he kept referring to the orange powder battery as my shiny, and it's like I'm pretty sure if they wouldn't have gotten sued by someone, whoever owns the rights to the Lord of the Rings, like, he should have just called it my precious. Like, because that's pretty much what he's doing. Like, he's in the show, like, he's dirty and he's grody, and I don't know if he's like that in the comics, so I can't say, like, if this is a bad or unfair representation of him. It's just from what I've what little I've known of the representation of him, I know most people kind of really like his character because, he's a badass. He's greedy and he has like a whole army of people. Like he can take people's powers and people's forms, so he's a one-man army in the comics. And like I can understand why people like that. I think in the comics he's supposed to be really formidable and really badass. And in this episode he comes off as being really, really cartoonish, and he's not formidable, and he's not a badass. And I don't know his origin in the stories and the comics, and I don't know how he's introduced in the comics. So maybe in the comics he does start out as a really smelly alien version of Golem from Lord of the Rings, and that eventually he becomes formidable, like he becomes the one-man army. I think, unfortunately, because the series got canceled, we're not going to see that. So, but yeah, like his character was okay. I mean, again, he comes off as a golem, and it's like, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, or if you've just been alive for the last 10 years, like, who Golem is, like, the My Precious thing. Like in Larfleeze just wasn't doing anything that Golem hasn't, so it's like you're not bringing anything new to the table. And honestly, I think with that, I think that's kind of a mistake to represent him like that. Like, I understand that the Green Lantern, the animated series, is a children's television show, so it's like it makes sense to a certain extent why they do something cartoony. But honestly, the series for most of its run, despite being a children's television series, hasn't really done anything that's overly cartoonish or overly childish. So this was kind of a strange move to decide to make this one character who's really important to the mythology of the comic book kind of really cartoony. Now, again, I don't read the comics, so I'm not familiar with them, so this may very well be a very fair representation of him. So, but I don't know, but like I've said like numerous times in this review, is that from my understanding of him, from what little I know of him, like he's supposed to be really formidable as a character. So I don't know how well this works. If anybody who watches this review and this show and does read comics and is familiar with him, I'd definitely like to get your opinions on that. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because again, like I don't read the comics, so I could be like super wrong with this. I think with that said, that was pretty much this week's episode. I think this might be either the last episode or the second to last episode, because usually to see the upcoming episodes I go to a website called tv.com, and they'll list the episodes, and this is they're not listing another one after this, so this might be the last one. So, and I think in other websites I've gone to, like this is the last episode they list. So I don't know if this is the last episode or if it's the second to last episode. Obviously, if there's another episode next week, I'll definitely review it. I think this might be the last one. But as far as speculation goes, they're gonna deal with Aya. I imagine they'll probably talk to her, and and she'll get back to normal. I hope that badass battle stuff happens. Maybe since we have the Red Lanterns, the Star Sapphires, who are like the purple violet lanterns, and we have the Blue Lanterns and now the Orange Lanterns, that maybe all the lanterns will team up, like all the Corps will team up to fight Aya, and then Hal and Kilowog and Razor will talk to her, and then she'll go back to normal, but like there'll be a cool battle. So I think that'll probably happen if we get more episodes. Um, Although obviously the series is, so I think it'd be nice to finish out the season like that if we're able to. I know we'll at least finish the first season. Like it wasn't renewed for a second season, but I think they at least got the first one out of the way. So hopefully we'll finish the season. So that's probably about all the speculation that I have for the upcoming plots. I don't know what next week's episode is, if there is a next week's episode. So I think that's kind of just my speculation so far. But anyways, this has been a review for Green Lantern, the animated series, season 1, episode 23, entitled Larfleeze, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. But anyways, make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe, and tell me what you guys think about this week's episode, or even the series in general. And if you know stuff about comics, don't feel free to correct me if I miss stuff, because again, I watched the show. It's not that I have anything against comics. It's just I'm kind of broke, so I can't buy them to read them. So just like feel free to correct me, or just. But anyways, well, this has been this week's episode, and I'll see you guys again next time.